guys, welcome back. My name is Nikita and I am the product manager for Tax 990. And today Christina's joining me again. She's the product manager for Tax Bandits. Just a little brief overview. Tax 990 is an IRS authorized e-file provider for your annual 990 series returns. And Christina's going to talk just briefly about Tax Bandits.
Hi everybody! So again, I'm the product manager for Tax Bandits. We are also an IRS authorized e-file provider, but we help more on the business and tax preparer like CPA side of things. We help with e-filing with the IRS, also the SSA in states, and we support over 40 different tax forms like 1099s, W-2s, 941s, that kind of thing.
Awesome. So last week, if you guys watched the show last week, we talked a little bit about IRS rejection errors on your 990 forms. We do have that posted on our page if you want to still check that out.
Of course they want to check that out.
Of course they want to check it out.
It was fantastic.
It was fantastic. But this week we're going to talk a little bit more about, we're going to dive into the different 990 forms and what might apply to your specific organization and what you should file on an annual basis. So to get started, there are 4 main forms that an organization is going to choose from each year. So there is the 990 PF, there's the 990 EZ, the 990 form, and then the 990 IN form. The forms are going to be based off of the type of organization you have and then your gross receipts and assets during the year. The form you choose is going to be based off whether your organization is a private foundation or your gross receipts and your total assets at the end of the tax year.
If one of the big factors is whether or not the organization is classified, and that's an IRS classification, right?
Correct,
That's not
yes.
something they just decide to be.
Right.
How do they know? What does that mean for them?
Yeah, so then the private foundation, you know if you're a private foundation because that is the status you chose when applying for exempt status, and that is the status that the IRS gave you. So last week we talked a lot about your determination letter. This information, again, can be found on your determination letter. It is the live and breathe by an organization. But if you reference your determination letter, it will clearly state on there, your organization is a private foundation, and you are required on an annual basis to file the 990 PF form.
So you can't choose. There's no other, that's what you do.
That's what you do, and we do get a lot of questions on that too, because unfortunately, it's not going to be based off your gross receipts or your income or any of the activities you've done through the year. It's solely based off the fact that you are or are not a private foundation.
That really eliminates some of those easier forms there.
Yeah, it does.
That takes care of the first half of it, right? But
Right.
what if the organization is not a private foundation?
Right, so if you're not a private foundation, then you are going to file one of the other 3 forms. And that's, like I said, it's going to be based on your income through the year, what your organization did. So you have the 990 IN, and that's meant for organizations that had $50,000 or less in gross receipts at the end of the year. They can opt for the 990 IN form. So the next level up would be the 990 EZ. So that's for more than $50,000 but less than $200,000 in gross receipts, or less than $500,000 in assets at the end of the year.
That's good to know.
Right. So then you would file the 990 EZ form. And then the third level is going to be the 990 form. That's the biggest form. If you made over $200,000 in gross receipts or over $500,000 in total assets, you have no choice but to choose the 990 long form.
So of the forms that you just mentioned, one of the terms that I feel like nonprofits use a lot is the postcard.
Yes.
And so how does that fall in with these 4 main forms? Is it one of them? How does that work?
So we get a lot of confusion on that. The postcard is actually the 990 IN form. So if the IRS, it's the 990 IN e-Postcard. So if you are typically filing an e-Postcard every year, you're actually filing the 990 IN form every year.
So same thing, just
Same thing.
different phrasing.
Same thing. Yep, different phrasing. I don't know why they do that.
Just
Who knows?
add a little confusion in there. You know.
Sprinkle on a little confusion.
So can an organization just file a different form every year? Can they go rogue and just switch it up?
They can go rogue if they want to, if their assets allow, if their gross receipts allow for it. So, during the pandemic, a lot of organizations weren't operating. So for that tax year, we had a huge increase in 990 IN forms because there was no operating. They just weren't functioning. And then the following year and the year after, things started coming back in the world and functioning again. So organizations started doing more volunteering, more donations, more events and things like that, fundraising. So you can choose. If you made less than $50,000 last year, you can file the 990N. If you had a very successful year this year, made over $200,000, then you can file the 990. If it drops again next year, you can choose in between. I mean, whichever suits your needs.
Just kind of based off of what you did that year.
Exactly.
That's so good to know. I feel like that would be such a lesser known fact, because once you're filing one thing, we tend to be creatures of habit.
Yep.
We just do the same thing.
Yep.
So maybe you're doing more work than you need to one year, right? So.
Well, and as we talked last week about it as well, but with the turnover that organizations see, they might just hear down the pipeline, oh, we file the 990N form. Oh, well, this is what we've done all these years past, but you had a great year, so this year you can't file the 990N, you have to move up a form. So like I said, it's really just based on how your organization's doing for the year.
And kind of actively keeping up with which one is it, and not just following the same thing. Because that's a great point. When there's turnover and you're just doing what the last person did,
right?
Maybe you don't even know that you need to check.
Right.
So that's definitely helpful. If you haven't had it with my questions about who files what, if I am eligible to file a 990N or an e-Postcard, as it were, can I file a 990EZ instead?
Yes, so that's a really good question, because a lot of donors, a lot of grant applications, a lot of different varieties of tools that organizations use require a larger form, or even a lot of states. If an organization has to file with the state directly, the state requirements have a larger form requirement. So you may qualify for the 990N, but you really want to apply for this grant this year, and the grant requires an EZ. So you can choose to file up. You can choose to file a 990 form instead of a 990 EZ, or a 990 EZ instead of a 990N, so on and so forth. The thing is, you can't choose to file down. You can't say, well, this one's easier or this one's fewer pages, so I'm going to do this one instead.
Wouldn't that be something?
Wouldn't that be something?
$200,000 in assets and grants, but we're going to file the N.
Right.
Skip all those extra pages. Yeah, right. That would not be good.
No, so you can go up, but you just can't go back down.
Good to know. And that makes sense, because if you are applying for something, it would make sense that they would want more financial information that's going to be a part of one of those longer forms.
Exactly.
One final question that's pretty obvious at this point. I think we're all on the same page, but does the IRS care which form I file?
Oh, that's such a fine line. I think, the IRS cares that you file annually to maintain your status, obviously. Yeah. And you want to file annually to keep from being penalized or have fees due or whatever. The IRS cares about that, and then they care that you choose the right form to meet the needs of your organization. They absolutely care, if you're a private foundation, that you file an I-90PF, and they will reject your form if you don't. They care, like I said, if you have the appropriate financial information for the 990 or EZ form, that you file that form accordingly. But otherwise, they just want the form to be shown up on their front doorstep and, let you move on with your fundraising. Did you have any other questions?
I think that's all of my questions for this week, but we'll make sure to have some more for next time.
Sounds good. So you guys, thank you for joining us. Hopefully this was helpful. If you have any topics that you want us to talk about or learn more information about, please let us know. We're always taking ideas and feedback, and we'd love to help you guys out as much as we can. Go ahead and subscribe to our channel so you can get some updates when we post new videos and things. We will next week, I think, be talking probably about the IRS mandate for e-filing, because that's still a pretty big thing in the organization world, in the nonprofit industry, things like that. So we'll probably dig into that a little bit deeper next week. But like I said, check us out, add a comment, add a topic, whatever you like, and thank you for joining us.